Hey, hello guys, I hope you're doing good. I hope your poultry businesses are doing good. And on this video we want to talk about the many causes of sudden death and the way you can control that. There are some factors that will lead to sudden death in poultry, and there's a way you can control them. So that's the main reason we are making this video, to make sure that we cover up the causes of sudden death and how we can control sudden death in our poultry. So before we go ahead, if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss the contents that we put in here, because they are so essential to your poultry business. To make sure that you are successful in your poultry business, you need to know, you need to have information. So make sure you subscribe and make sure you will go through all the videos which are there, so that you are able to get educated on our poultry farming. So let's go ahead and talk about these many factors that causes sudden death in poultry. So number one, this is a major one, and this is something that needs to be taken care of. So number one, ventilation. So you need to make sure you have enough ventilation to your poultry. So what I've noticed is that many poultry farmers, these poultry farmers who are starting their business, the structure that they are using was not really meant for poultry. So for us, as in for me, a poultry farmer, I'm very strategic when I'm doing my poultry business. So my poultry was strategically made for poultry, and my ventilations, which are these that you are able to see here, are strategically for good ventilation for the beds. So those poultry farmers who are using structures which were not meant for poultry, they have challenges in this part of ventilation. That's what I've noticed. And when it comes to the structure which was not meant for poultry, you find like there's only a few spaces that will bring in enough ventilation for your beds. So that becomes a challenge to such poultry farmers. So what I would advise is to be strategic when you are choosing a structure for poultry. You make sure the windows are good enough for enough ventilation. So you find these structures, they have maybe two small holes pumped in to make sure air is coming in. Okay, in some seasons they can survive, but there are some seasons that these poultry farmers with such structures can't survive, especially in hot season. They experience a lot of loss. And if you are really passionate about poultry farming, I know when you are starting up, you don't have a structure and you are using what you have, which is very much okay. But you have to be strategic, which means you choose which seasons to keep your beds, to make sure they value with the weather you are having, with the ventilation you are having. So ventilation, very important. Make sure you have good enough ventilation for your beds coming in, to make sure they are having fresh air coming in and going out. So secondly, spacing. Some poultry farmers, they'll keep a lot of beds in one space. Okay, so when you keep beds in a small space, there's a lot of challenges of you having to experience sudden death. So what usually happens, if you can notice, for those who put beds in a small space, you find a bed that will die, it's from maybe eating, then to move from where it was eating, to move now to go to drink water, probably, so that it can have a cool and nice digestion in the body. It needs at least water, because the feed is dry, so it needs some water to make sure the digestion goes very well in the stomach. So you find like the bed is very tasty. This is why it's important to have water in your poultry all the time. It's tasty. Then you find, like, since they are overcrowded, for the bed to move from where it is to go where the water is, it will be difficult, because it will try to move, then through trying to move to go to where the water is, it becomes a challenge for the bed. Then you find like it gets tired, it sits down, then it's really, really, really thirsty and it needs to drink water. This is why spacing is very important, to make sure your spacing is very accurate. You make sure everything is just in order. They don't have to strive to move from the beds to go to where they can drink water. You find like before it even reaches there, it's really now breathing very fast, because now the heart, the body needs water to support, because that feed has taken away the water. Now it needs another water. Then before it even reaches to the point where it needs to drink water, you find like it dies. Then another thing is this point, heat stress. It relates to ventilation. If your ventilation is not really enough, of course your poultry will be very hot, which means as a result your bed will start having heat stress. And heat stress affects a lot of things. It also triggers other diseases to come into your poultry, like cough and flu, which we call psychoplasma. It triggers that. You find like your beds start having cough due to heat stress. So when it's hot, sometimes your beds start experiencing stunt growth, because heat takes a lot of vitamins and nutrients from your beds due to the heat, because they're gasping they're gasping when breathing, they're panting. So the heat takes away the proteins. So heat stress, you find like it's the heart is now pumping very fast, because blood is moving very fast because it's hot. And when it comes to broilers, it's different on the way the heart grows. It doesn't grow according to the way the bed is growing. The heart grows according to time. So you find like a heart is small and the broiler is big, the bed is big, then the heart is pumping very fast. So sometimes it cannot pump enough blood to make sure the whole body is having the blood it needs. Then you find like there's an heart attack, then the bed just dies. So make sure your ventilation is okay, because this leads also to ventilation. So make sure your ventilation is okay so that you avoid that. So sometimes you can use stress pack, you can use vitamins. There are some vitamins which are really good for your beds not to have heat stress. They are anti-stress. They make the way they made these supplements to make sure like your beds don't have to strive. They cool down their temperature, they cool down the whole body system so that they be able to survive. Then the other thing is the feeding. Of course somebody will be like, of course bed needs to eat all the time, but it's not all the time. When they are 4 weeks to 5 weeks, the beds need some spacing of feeding, because when you feed them all the time, you find like they're just eating and eating and eating. Then due to overeating, they start flipping over and dying. And sometimes you find like they just die close to the water, or they die close to the feed. This is my dog. See? So they'll die close to the water or close to the feed. So the way you can control sudden death when it comes to the feeding schedules, you can give your beds from morning. They eat, maybe of course during the night you can't control it very well, because maybe you're asleep, then you sleep. But as a poultry farmer, you need to make sure your beds eat. You give them maybe 6 hours they eat, 6 hours they rest for digestion to take place in a good way. So some poultry farmer will be like, no, maybe the beds are hungry. No, they're not hungry. The beds still have that feed inside them, because if you notice, even if a bed has eaten from maybe 6 hours, then you kill it maybe at 10, you find they still have food which is not yet digested. So beds can stay for 6 hours, that food is still getting digested. So for you to avoid sudden death, make sure you give them a specific time they can eat and a specific time they can just sit down and digest that food in a nice and according way. So make sure you do that. If you've tried all the ways, like I've given them antibiotic, I thought they were sick, no. Sometimes you have to control the feeding guide. You have to control your beds. Your beds can't control themselves. They're just eating and eating and eating. So that usually causes them to now start flipping over. They start dying, because the feed they are eating, it goes inside the body, and then at some point it goes and produces fat to the heart. I know when there's fat to the heart doesn't function very well. Then they start having heart attacks, because the heart is also small again. So make sure you give them specific time when they should eat and when they should do not eat, so that they sit down, then they digest that food. So many have said, no, I've tried to give them antibiotics, I've tried this, but they are still dying each and every day and they're getting worse. Oh, okay, it's not that reason. If it's not, as a poultry farmer, you need to try, okay, from this way, I've tried this one, they haven't worked out. So as in for me, with my experience, I've seen this has worked. Starve them for a while. 6 hours, don't give them food. They digest the one they've eaten. Then give them again for 4 hours. Then another 6 hours, don't give them food. Then eventually that sudden death will disappear. But these methods that I've given you doesn't take away the biosecurity measures. Make sure your poultry is clean. Make sure your litter system is also clean. So all these are the measures you need to take to make sure you don't experience sudden death. So guys, thank you for watching, and make sure you subscribe, because on this channel we really put up some content which are important for your poultry business. So like the video so that I should know that you like the content that I've put in, and make sure you subscribe, and if there's any queries that you have, put them in my comment section, then I'll be able to respond to that. Thank you guys for watching.